Okay, we're about to go live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Mighty Blaze's Celebrity Conversations. I'm your host, Jane Roper, and I'm so excited to have with us today two fabulous authors. We have Laura Zigman, who is the author of several novels, including her most recent, Separation Anxiety. Hello, Laura, and welcome.
Thank you. Hi.
And Laura with the Warhol in her living room, so very impressive. And we have she's going to be interviewing Heidi Pitlor, fabulous Heidi Pitlor, whose new novel is called Impersonation. So thank you, Heidi, for being here, closing out your world tour, book tour, all around your living, all around your office, around the world. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Great to see you, Jane. And Laura.
And Laura. Yes. So I'm going to give some brief intros to both of you guys, and then I'm going to let you take it away. Viewers, if you have watching this live and you have questions you want to throw to Heidi or Laura, feel free to put them into the chat, and if we can get to them, we will. So without further ado, Laura Zigman is the author of Animal Husbandry, which was made into the movie Someone Like You, starring Hugh Jackman and Ashley Judd. Did you get to meet Hugh Jackman?
I sure did.
Oh,
I sure did, Jane.
I'm jealous.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Dating Big Bird, Her, and Piece of Work. She's been a contributor to the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Huffington Post, produced a popular online series of animated videos called Annoying Conversations, and was the recipient of a Yaddo residency. She lives in Cambridge, Massachusetts, with her husband, son, and deeply human Sheltie. Her newest novel, Separation Anxiety, was published in March after being named a most anticipated book of 2020 by Good Morning America, there it is, it's beautiful, Entertainment Weekly, Vogue, Real Simple, USA Today, Parade, Glamour, BuzzFeed, The Millions, and Cosmopolitan. The Washington Post, yay! The Washington Post says, the light from Laura Zigman's new novel, Separation Anxiety, is generated by a kind of literary nuclear fusion, an intense compression of grief and humor. Zigman has a great humorist's eye for the comedy we've seen but overlooked. If you're stalked by the loneliness of middle age, you may think the last thing you need is a novel about a woman driven to wearing her dog. You'd be wrong. I love that. That's awesome. Like, okay, well, maybe that is what we all need, especially during pandemics. Heidi Pitlor is the author of the novels The Birthdays and The Daylight Marriage, which was optioned for film. A former senior editor at Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, she's been the series editor of the Best American Short Stories since 2007. Wow, it's been that long. Damn. She's also the editorial director of the literary studio Plimpton. Her writing has been published in the New York Times, the Boston Globe, Lit Hub, Plowshares, the Huffington Post, and elsewhere. She lives outside Boston with her children. Heidi's new novel, Impersonation, was a Good Morning America must-read, an Apple Books Best Book, and an Indie Next Great Read. The New York Times calls it a book that fires up the synapses, saying, Pitlor's voice is witty and brisk, bringing warmth and light to questions of identity, independence, and intellectual property. Author Rebecca Makkai, Pulitzer finalist for The Great Believers, says, by turns revealing, hilarious, dishy, and razor-sharp, Impersonation lives in that rarest of sweet spots, the propulsive page-turner for people with high literary standards. Very nice. Welcome, Heidi. Welcome, Laura. Take it away, you guys. And singing is encouraged.
Thank you, Jane. Heidi, we met 2 summers ago. We were just talking in the green room before we went live. But Heidi and I feel like I'd known your name for so long, and I'd known your books, and and we have a similar pedigree in the sense that we both worked in publishing, and then we were novelists, and then I think I've done a little bit more ghosting than you, but still ghosts. So we have the kind of that mixture of elements that we should have met years and years ago. But tell us, first of all, I love the way Zibby Owens does her interview. She just makes you go right off the bat and say, what's your book about?
Oh, okay.
Tell us about Impersonation.
Okay, my book is about a ghostwriter, a single mom ghostwriter who is hired to write a memoir for a prominent women's rights advocate. This woman is kind of secretly being groomed for office. I'm just going to give away the plot because it's floated out there so often. And the ghostwriter becomes kind of an unwitting image maker to try and help soften this woman's image, make her more likable, that word we all love, or writers hate, actually. And so it's really the story of two women, two moms of young sons, who are both have the same goals, which is for women to be treated better and paid better, but going about it very different ways. And the main kind of storyline of the book is this ghostwriter trying to write a book that becomes very clearly impossible to write. So as a writer, it was delicious to write about how hard it is to write. I didn't really have to travel that far.
So what made it so hard to write? I mean, I know why, I'm just asking you.
Well, I think all books are really hard to, you mean in the book, the plot? Yeah. Okay. So yes, here we go. So
Allie has trouble getting the
Allie, right. Allie is the ghostwriter, and Lana is her subject, who does not want to provide very much information. She's holding things very close to her chest. She's staying very kind of academic, which is not what people want from this book. They want a soft, fuzzy memoir of motherhood and a mom and her son skipping through fields. And she maybe doesn't have memories that need to be put into a book, which leaves the ghostwriter in the position of needing to fill a lot of empty pages, and where can she find this information? So that's what makes it hard, is this is clearly going to be a book full of crap. Where do you get the crap?
Well, there's so many moments that are relatable, whether you're a ghostwriter or a writer or a parent who is working. There's a great scene where she's getting ready to go to New York and she's trying to figure out what to wear. And I was once describing to a friend of mine what it was like to get dressed for a meeting, to meet someone, a prospective person who was looking to hire a ghostwriter, and all the machinations I was going through about what I was going to wear and not wear because I didn't want to look to this or to that. But Allie is definitely in that moment of having, I think one meeting she brings her son with her, but there's all of that publishing stuff and mom stuff and writer stuff, and it's just so interesting. What was it like for you to write about being a ghostwriter? What interested you about it? To have your character be one?
Well, it felt at once close to home and not close to home, which feels like the sweet spot in writing. You want to be able to mine emotional material. So yes, I've been in publishing for 400 years or over 20 years. I've been writing for a long time. I am a mom. It just seemed like this it landed on me one day, and I thought, this is the sweet spot of everything: anonymity, women's issues, class. I wanted her not to live in New York, but to sort of deal with New York, to deal with very glamorous things and then come home and not deal with glamorous things. And it just felt like an easy subject matter. And I wanted to write about someone who's often invisible, even for obvious reasons, but the worker bee type of person who's behind the scenes, who is propping other people up, and what things look like from her point of view. I am not a ghostwriter. I've done like a minute amount, not as much as other people have, but I did talk to a bunch of people for this book, and it was just a delight to write. It felt like these are my people. I mean, I didn't have to travel far in my imagination to think, well, what would it be like to get dressed up to meet a big fancy person? Because I've done this. I work with a lot of big fancy writers, if not public figures. And there is a weird kind of chameleon thing you find yourself doing as a writer of, oh, well, what will they want me to look like? What should I wear? Makeup, not makeup. If it's a feminist, do I want to look good or not? What do I, flats, heels? What the hell,
Yeah.
What do other people think of me? Who do I want to be? Who am I actually beneath this? And as you get older, that gets harder to locate sometimes. And these were all the issues I wanted to bring into the book. So.
And I love that you, the idea of money and finances has been this, I think, really taboo subject for a long time. I mean, I feel like I was one of the first people to go broke, not quite broke, in like 2008. And I was going to write something about it. My agent at the time was like, no.
Yeah,
it's super. And I'm like, well, why not? And she's like, it's embarrassing. And I was like, well, but then like everyone else started to brag about how broke they were and how much money they had lost and blah, blah, blah. And now it's like, I mean, there was a great book this summer. I'm sure, most of us read it, want, which was a lot about that. And there is this sense of like, you know, this myth that writers have it, you know, you go from one lucrative project to the next, and you know, we are the gig economy in a way. I mean, I really truly go from gig to gig, like that. And so does Allie. So that pressure, you did really well too.
Oh, thank you. I have to say, it's very hard for me not to turn this into an interview of you. So maybe we'll slowly wind our way there. But yeah, no, I think I've always been really interested in class, and it really comes out in young motherhood, I think, where you sort of, there's this entitlement as a parent that, you know, we're all supposed to give our kids you assume you're going to be able to give your kids what they want, and then suddenly you can't, and things that you take for granted you can't, and especially in this country and culture. And you're right, it's absolutely seen as, oh, we don't talk, you know, publishing is very New York focused. There's a lot of people being propped up by spouses and families, and I think, but there are people who aren't, and those were the people that interested me for this book. So yeah.
So like my two questions I always ask people, like, how'd you meet your spouse? And like, if you're a writer, like, how'd you get started? So I'm always curious, like, what was your path from either publishing or writing to writing?
How did I get started? I came in a really weird way. I studied political science, which I've always been really interested in politics, at McGill in Montreal.
Wow.
I grew up outside of Boston, but did that, moved out to Colorado for 3 years, and kind of worked in social worky stuff, worked in a shelter for homeless and runaway teenagers, a court appointed, you know, kids were ordered to stay there. And did some freelance writing, but I really didn't, I always sort of thought I was above writing. It felt very frivolous to me. In college, I was like, oh, my English major friends, they're so silly. I'm studying politics because I will be a lawyer. I was also studied economics for a while. And then what was the love of writing? You know, I've been really interested in creativity, and I love making stuff up. I'm a huge liar. I'm just kidding. Well, any fiction writer kind of lies, you know. But out in Colorado, I took one writing class at the Jack Kerouac School. It's called Naropa. It was a wonderful program. My personality was not a magical fit there, but it kind of got me going. And this and another class I took earlier in kind of women's studies and writing, I thought, this is where my love is. So I kind of slowly veered over there, moved back to Boston, got my MFA at Emerson College. And I started temping at Houghton Mifflin as the receptionist. Just got my name in the temp pool. I was in grad school, you know, and I had to pay my way through. So just started doing that, kind of hopscotched through a few different jobs there. I started working, I got a job as an assistant working for travel guides, doing marketing on travel guides. It felt like 5 minutes after I got that job, Houghton Mifflin sold this line of travel guides. Then I got a job as an editorial assistant and just stayed with this wonderful editor who became the publisher and just rode her coattails forward for many, many years. So that's probably enough that I need to say. and then, I should say, so I did that for 10 years. And then in 2006, I was thinking about becoming a mom, and that stuff was happening. And I was thinking I need to cut back a little bit. And so the series editor position of Best American Short Stories was offered for me. And it was perfect because it was work from home. And that
sounds great.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. What is it like being the editor of the Best American Short Stories? What's that? How do you choose them, or how does that process work?
So I choose the guest editors. We try to pick people that are critically and commercially successful. I read a bajillion things a year. I pick 120 short stories, and then the guest editor picks 20 that goes in this annually published book. It's a wonderful job. I get to help new writers a lot. I feel like there's a lot of things, you have these wonderful, weird experiences of, you know, the book does pretty well. And so oftentimes I hear something like, wow, I submitted the story 50 times and it got turned down, and then it makes it in this book. And it's just so gratifying. I kind of feel like a sort of a bit of a disturber in the literary universe, because you do. I mean, it's really important to me to read small magazines, to keep the series diverse and to keep it surprising and diverse in every way. genre, in terms of gender, in terms of, you know, all of the meanings of that word. I think, you know, to kind of keep my finger on the pulse of literary fiction and how it's changing through time, and it is changing, is really interesting.
Right. Sounds great.
Yeah, it is. I'm really lucky. Super lucky.
So what's next for you? Are you working on another novel, or are you?
So no. So as we, you know, I also am the editorial director of a what's called a literary studio. So it's a tech firm called Plimpton, and we do also disturbing the atmosphere out there. We do all kinds of digital publishing, which is also verboten. I seem to like to go into the dark, ugly spaces of publishing that people don't want to go in. And we do all kinds of different projects and all kinds of different publishing, and it's been doing really well right now because digital, you know, because of COVID, but also this is, it's really, it sits right at the, where tech meets literature. And we do things, we, you know, like I curated a list of short stories that became an app that you can access on the New York subway. It's called Stories in Motion. If you're a member of the New York Public Library, you can read it there. They've done a virtual reality version of Lincoln and the Bardo. It's just playing. It's playing with tech and writing, and it's sort of seeing what stories look like in different formats, which is really fun and interesting for me. So that said, it's been really hard to manage a pandemic, 2 jobs, and there's other jobs that I won't bore you with, but little, you know, and think about writing something big and long and new. So right now I'm on pause. I'm kind of noodling ideas, but I'm just letting myself kind of not write for a bit, which feels really good for the moment. And I know
My
I get
favorite thing to do is to not write.
it is, right? What are you working on now? Are you not writing too?
No, I just well, I sold my next novel, so I'm kind of excited about that. Yeah.
What's it called?
But I'm not writing it right now. I mean, I wrote a little bit of it, so
Well,
I'm enjoying
yeah,
that
that's
writing
good.
it.
It's fun
I'm
to
waiting.
write.
I'm waiting. Yeah.
Can you tell us what it's called so we can tell everyone to look for
Yeah.
it?
The new one is called Small World, and it's about 2 sisters who move in together as adults. Okay. They're both divorced. Neither of them have kids, and they live in Cambridge, and they are kind of like gonna sort of heal their childhood, and yet when the older sister moves in, she thinks she's just going to stay for like a few weeks, and she of course doesn't find her own place for a while. And in the meantime, these people move in above them, and they're very annoying new neighbors, and so it sort of drives their relationship.
That sounds
cool.
So great.
Yeah,
it'll be
awesome.
It'll be fun.
Can I, well, and you can choose to talk about it, but I think it would be great for you to talk a little bit about some ghosting in whatever way you can. Obviously, we're not going to blabber, but, you know, having written a novel about ghostwriting, I feel like I talk to a lot of different people, sort of seem to specialize or not. There's a generalists and not. Can you, in whatever way feels right to you, talk a little bit about the work that you've done in that?
Sure. I got into ghostwriting because I had written 4 novels. My last one was published in, my 4th one was published in 2006. And in 2006, everything in my life kind of went haywire, and I was just unable to write my own fiction. And I needed money. And so I had some surgery, and I was watching a lot of television. And I was watching, there was a lot of food TV. It was like Ina Garten. It was a long time ago. It was like 2006, 2007. It was Ina Garten. And there was this show called Confessions of a Matchmaker. And I really loved it. It was this matchmaker. It was there were 2 patties, and I got one patty. There was a different patty. So I got the patty in Buffalo. Very tough talking.
How did you get that? How did this land on you?
Right. So I was in my bed recovering from extensive surgery, and I had my laptop, and I had a blog because everyone blogged at the time. And I was like, oh my God, I love the show. Anyway, at some point, the producer, who is a really brilliant documentarian who was working on this reality show, contacted me and said, Patty Novak would like to do a book. Are you interested in ghostwriting? And I was like, of course. And of course, never done it before. And I met her, we made a deal and all that. And then I quickly emailed Bill Novak, William Novak, who is B.J. Novak's father, who is a Newton writer. Obviously, B.J. Novak wasn't famous then, and but his father is very famous, and he wrote he ghostwrote all the big books in the like 80s. I mean, he was just an amazing person, and I met him at a fundraiser, and so I emailed him, and I thought, like, oh my God, I'm going to just ask him. So he actually called me. We spoke for 2 hours. He was incredibly generous. And I was like, how do you do it? So he told me what to do. He just said, this is how you do it. Don't do that. And some of the tips he gave me were so funny. He said, you know, these famous people, I mean, whether you're working with like an actual celebrity or someone who thinks they're a celebrity, it really doesn't matter. They are celebrities in their own minds if they're not already a celebrity, but they always want you to come and watch them. He said, don't do that. He said, they're always going to try to get you, you know, come fly to my house and spend a week with me or travel with me, like watch me be me. He said, don't do it. It's a waste of time. So he gave me all these great tips. But the most important tip, which was like the, you know, most important thing about ghostwriting, sorry, it's my dog, is that this is not your book. This is not your story. This is not you writing an article for Vanity Fair. This is not your impression of this person. This is their story. And so that makes it really hard, because if you're, you know, I had the really good fortune of working with Wendy Davis, who was a Texas state senator who filibustered in her pink sneakers.
Yeah.
And she was like one of those people that, you know, is even better than you think she is, like in real life. And that's extremely rare. Those of us who have met famous people know, like, that never happens, but she was amazing. But when you get to work with people like that, it's really an honor. And the rest of the people, you know, you're really struggling to kind of tell their story in a way that, you know, is truthful, but is their version. I mean, you're not really there to say, excuse me, you know, I read the People magazine article. And I mean, there's a certain amount of that you have to do because everyone's read the People magazine. So you have to kind of address the truth, but you still have to let them, it's their book, you know? So there's a lot of that. And it's just a real tightrope walk where you're trying to, you know, you have to get their voice right. You have to get the facts right. You have to make it a good book. And those three is like juggling. And sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's not. And the hardest part, I think, is just getting time with them. I mean, because most of them are very, very busy. So just to get the book done is a challenge in and of itself. But I think I had done 2 or 3 books, and I was contacted. I can't remember how it came about, but there's a secret ghostwriting group on Facebook. And
there actually is. I thought I was being so creative.
There's like, I was wondering if, because yours is so clever, you have ghostwriter talk, and it's this little thing that you have in the book, which is really funny. But there are 2 secret groups, or there's probably more that I'm not part of. But anyway, there's 2, and they had just gotten together, and they used some of the top women ghostwriters, and one of them invited us to her family's house in Vermont. And so I was saying to my husband, like, yeah, I'm going to get in the car and meet a bunch of ghostwriters. I've never met them. I'm driving. I said, if I hate them, I'll be home tonight. And if I don't hate them, I'll be home Tuesday. And I was home Tuesday. I love them. And they do all the big books. We're still in touch. And every now and then, like, one of them does all the Trump books, and she's amazing. And part of the fun of being a ghostwriter or knowing about ghostwriting is like, I think one of your interviews was like, how do you know? And you can always go in the acknowledgement space. So even if the ghostwriter isn't named in the front, you know, you go in the acknowledgements, and usually they're contractually obligated to put an acknowledgement in there. So
right. So have you had the experience of having an NDA, of not being able to? Okay.
Yes, there's something I would love to talk about right now, but I did sign an NDA, and I've signed NDAs on most of the other stuff. But I feel like in my own version of the NDA, if you're going to say something nice, you can say it. So that's why I know. And also Wendy Davis, like, she, you know.
Oh, I know. And that I want to ask you all about, because that's a female politician, and she's such a wonderful.
Yeah.
Can you talk at all about that process or no?
Oh yeah. I mean, she was just incredibly articulate. So you would we would have a phone call. I mean, right when we got started, she announced that she was running for governor of Texas, which was essentially at the time like running for president. I mean, she was like, it was a, you know, very red state, and here she was coming off of the filibuster. So she was just like busy all the time. She was doing 3 or 4 campaign stops a day. So anyway, just getting time on the phone was really hard. But we would make a phone date. She would actually keep it, which is very unusual for, you know, famous people. Yeah. She would keep it. She'd be on time. she'd be on a plane, in a car, in her office, and I'd say, okay, tell me about your time at Harvard Law School. And I turn the tape recorder on, and she would just, like, she would talk in paragraphs. It would be like, she would just talk, and it was just, and we'd get out, you know, an hour would go by, I'd say, thanks so much. I mean, I would ask her questions, but so many other times, you know, you're talking to someone and you're just, you know, you're flailing, you're trying to get a story down, or you're trying to get the details down, you don't remember. I mean, I can imagine, it's very strange. I mean, I try to put myself in their position, like, how weird would it be if I were talking to someone who's going to write my book for me? But it is also, you know, some people are just more articulate than others, and they're more able to sort of have access to the details and to the, you know, to their own words. So it made it so much easier. And other people, I mean, I worked with Eddie Izzard, who's this trans,
Oh yeah.
Now he's transgender, but actor, comedian, and he was like a brilliant person. I mean, the hardest part was just getting time with him, but that was fascinating. So it's always like a really interesting process. And I think at one point Wendy told me, and I think most of the people I've worked with have thought this, or I'm sure most people who work with ghostwriters think this. I think she said to me at one point that I knew more about her than any really one person. Like, there were so many people that knew things, but, you know, she just downloaded so much of her life, like, in such a short time, that it really was, you know, they tell you everything. You can't use everything.
You can't use everything. Have you ever had a time where someone didn't tell you enough?
Yeah, that just happened, and it's really, really strange. That's why I was so fascinated by your character, you know, where they have to fill in Lana's story with Allie's details. It's like she just doesn't have enough, you know, soft material, and so Allie has to kind of make it up using her own stuff, which, you know, I can't really imagine that happening in any of the projects I worked on, but I loved it as like a fictional story. I was like, that's so cool. But yeah, I just worked with someone, a celebrity, and it was just really hard. They either didn't, there was a lot they didn't want to talk about, and that they would not talk about. And so then there was just very little else. And that is like, I have no idea what to do with that. Yeah. That's like the biggest, you can work around anything else, but that is like, that's very hard.
Right. So interesting. Yeah. I feel like I could talk to you for 10 hours, but I will not. Jane, you look like you're gonna.
Yeah, well, I was gonna ask you, Heidi, because I know I you know, read portions of the book when it was in process, and I remember you having some concerns about, like, would this actually happen, and what, you know, would a ghostwriter actually do this, or, you know, how realistic is it, and are people gonna worry? And it was, you know, listening to the conversation, it's an interesting thing I think a lot of fiction writers deal with. It's like, what can you get away with, right? When you're researching a profession or researching something, how much can you stretch the truth? So was that something that you bumped up against here? Like, where's the line?
Oh, absolutely. It felt like I was, you know, I was sort of tiptoeing into it, and I thought, oh, this feels really, you know, could this happen? And what helped me was, well, I talked to a bunch of ghostwriters, but what really helped me even more was talking to political consultants who said, absolutely, political memoirs are campaign tools, really. They are. And so I felt like my hunch kind of was true. And in fact, kind of, this is a mild version of what might happen. So I felt on better ground then. You don't want, when you're writing a novel, you don't want something like plausibility to derail the reader. You want them sort of, you know, coasting along, reading it, not thinking about it, but inside it. And so I felt like in the end it was okay. I mean, again, it feels a little far-fetched, but it sort of worked at the same, I hope. I mean, you know, again, it did help to talk to people though.
Yeah. Well, and when you think about what, you know, what TV writers get away with when they show, you know, like the hospital shows or like the ad agency or whatever, you know, it's like, they play around with it a lot, you know, they simplify and
yeah.
It's not, no.
Yeah, no, it's entertainment in this book too. I mean, publishing, you know, people said, wow, you know, and I'm like, this is me poking, I'm exaggerating. This is not my experience in publishing at all. And these people are not drawn from anyone at all. It would be so ridiculous if it were. I mean, there's little hints of stuff, but no, it would be so boring to kind of water it down and write things as they happened. There's some shades of things, but for the most part, no.
We just had a question from someone watching, from my neighbor, Chris. Hi, Chris. wondering if for ghostwriters, is there pressure on you to, I guess this is more for Laura, like, is there pressure on you to fact check the information? So if a subject tells you something, do you have to then go be like, did that really happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, I didn't do a lot of big celebrities. It's just not my thing. And so this time I did do this last project was with a celebrity. And that was hard because there was stuff that I couldn't quite verify. It wasn't that it was false or something, but I just couldn't. There was sort of things that I couldn't quite nail down, and I think some of them, there were certain fibby kind of thing, like people stretch the truth, and we all do it. So there's a certain amount you're trying to nail down just enough so that the reader, you're always thinking like people who read celebrity bios generally have digested everything. So they're going to know if the celebrity says something that is so false or that omits something that they've read about in a gossip column or whatever. It's, you try to convince the person, why don't you just address it? Yeah. Because if you keep denying it, you get to have your version of it. Just you do it in a page. You don't have to do too much. Just acknowledge it. But a lot of times they don't want to do that, or they just want to try to skirt a lot of things. And it really is hard because you're trying to get them to go there. And then you've got the publisher who's like, get them to go there. Yeah. And you're in the middle and you're trying to, the way I work too is, I generally sign with the person who's got the book deal. So a famous person or a person has already made the deal with a publisher, and then the publisher doesn't hire me, the person hires me. So my contract is with the person. So I'm sort of working with the publisher, but I'm working for the person.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So we try to balance that in terms of sometimes it's like a real triangulation. They're saying one thing and they're saying another, and you're trying to you're really caught in the middle. But at the end of the day, it's a good question. You're trying to really verify enough that it makes sense, because again, the readers for certain books like this and these kinds of memoirs are really, they know, and they will know if something is not true or that something is different than what they've read. And if it's different, that's fine. I mean, then you explain it, but yeah.
Makes sense.
What's been so best and worst jobs? Can you talk about those?
You mean like in life, like IHOP versus being a
you can go IHOP. I meant ghostwriting, but if you want to talk IHOP. No, I meant like best ghostwriting job, best experiences, worst experiences. You don't have to name names. Or you can if you want.
Yeah, I mean, I did.
Horrible.
Geez, I don't know if I can't say this. I did have a horrible, horrible experience. And it was so horrible. It was like so epically horrible. And it's the daughter of a very famous person. And it was just so horrible. And I've really never been able to talk about it. And I just, except to friends. And it's unfortunate because it's such a good story and I just can't really tell it. But the world is full of those. Yeah, those stories we can't tell. Yeah. But did you have a worst experience?
Well, I don't have much ghostwriting experience. Yeah. Again, mini. So, I mean, I've had bad job experiences and tense, weird, where you just don't click with someone. And I wouldn't say it's guest editors, and I'm not going to, again, talk about it either. Right. But I think it's especially interesting between women sometimes. I think there can be just a funny jockeying. I think, without going into detail or naming names or anything, I think I've been really lucky in general overall to work with really wonderful people. But every once in a while you happen upon someone who sees it as a zero-sum game. And, if you're getting something, they're not. And it's a really tricky thing, but it's left me realizing how important it is to treat other women well. And I think in writing this book, I didn't want to write, I don't want to give away anything, but I think what the reader thinks is going to happen does not happen. And it was very important to me to not tell that story that's been told a million times, which is someone dumping on someone else. I think that when I work with younger women or any, there's a certain code, I feel like, and it really with human beings in general, which is, to try to help each other. I'm going to sound all Pollyanna-ish here, but I think it really is, especially now. Things are rough out there, and I think it's really important as women that we bolster each other up, especially as the election barrels toward us, and here we go. You know, there's a lot of ugliness right now, and people are sowing division. And again, this book at its heart is about what is really sowing division. Is it us as people, or is there something more insidious and generalized and cultural at work here? And how do we look at it? So I don't, that didn't answer your question, but.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not a friendship between Allie and Lana.
Yeah, no.
Working relationship, and they have to kind of navigate that.
And it's a funny, I would imagine a ghostwriting relationship. Your dog is so cute, by the way.
Yeah, it really is.
So like the dog in your book. But it's an interesting, I think, relationship of, it's almost this kind of relationship that needs to be defined as you go in this book, and they need to define it, because it's like who's where, the power dynamics shift. I would imagine in ghostwriting relationships, they do too. I think there's this thinking of, oh, the poor ghostwriter's exploited, but it's not that way at all. I think there's a certain power in being anonymous and providing someone else with their words, and defining someone to them, or you know, creating this image. And that was just really interesting to me to explore that shifting power dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that shows up in ghostwriting when they're used to being the talented one, or they're used to being the one whose talent is being used at the moment. And then they're not used to being not in control. I mean, it's really a control issue for most of the people that you work for. And they're used to being the one in charge, you know, on stage, behind, you know, in front of the camera. They're the one. And it's not necessarily about ego all the time. It's also just about like, they're in charge. And then they talk to you and talk to you and talk to you. And then there's this moment where you have to show them pages. And it's always just the worst moment. It's worse than as a novelist showing an editor pages. I mean, that just makes you want to vomit. You know, it's just so hard. You're just dying every minute that you don't hear from them and everything. But this is different. It's like you're showing this person, and you've got to get their voice right. You've got to get the whole thing right. You've got to get it right. You know, I usually show 100 pages just to give them, you know, enough to hate or something to like. But it's just so terrifying. And it's really the moment where they are not in control. They start to read it. They usually flip out, even if you get it right. And most of the time, except this one time, I usually get it pretty right on. But there's always a thing where you've written too much. Like they need you to take that out. I shouldn't have said all that about my father. Take it out. But it's this sense that like they are like giving up the control, and that's where it gets really. And it's really understandable. I mean, imagine if I try to imagine it from. If I like them, I try to imagine it from their point of view. And it is a super weird process, and it is really strange. And they do get to have the chance to say, no, please take that out. I just was saying that about my mother. I didn't really mean it, you know? And so it's a back and forth process like that. But
what can you talk about when you got it wrong? What happened then? You don't have to name names again, or you can if you want.
I think that again was this particular situation where the person just was not able to be forthcoming. There was a big thing in her past that she just did not want to discuss. And that was really kind of this big, it would kind of, let's go this way. And it was like, oh, there's the thing, let's go this way. And no matter where we went, it was like, we were avoiding this thing. So there's this big hole. And when someone just feels completely unable to talk about something, then they just get really constricted in every way. And so it seemed like every story was just like missing 3 beats. It was like, okay, you know, and then what? And I don't necessarily think it was that the person was really inherently uninteresting. I mean, some people are way more interesting than others, but it wasn't, it was like the lack of forthcomingness. It was just every time. And that is like, again, you can work with almost anything. And you can work with really nasty people. You can work with them, you know, but they're interesting, you know? And so this was just like, kept coming up against that thing. So that was the challenge. I could not figure out how to do that, but yeah.
Yeah. Heidi, did you hold up a picture of your book yet? I mean, not a picture.
No, I will.
The physical book. Yes, I just wanted to make sure you had a chance to do that because it's so cool. I love that cover.
I love this cover too. I will say it's Patrick Leger from Brooklyn. He's amazing. He does really interesting, I think he has a really specific vision. I was lucky enough to be shown his portfolio and I got to pick this image, which never happens. So yay, Algonquin. But I love that it's kind of weird and memorable. I think it sort of shows well online. I love that she's got this weird kind of tilt to her head, no nose. I think I'm all, yeah. So I was really happy with it. I think it's perfect for this book. So yes, I'm just going to sit here like this.
Yeah, just hold this. Everybody look at that beautiful book and then go buy it. You got to go buy it.
That's right.
Yeah, go do that. So I think we'll maybe wrap things up fairly soon, but Laura, were there any other questions you wanted to ask Heidi or things about her book or writing or whatever? Since Heidi, you did most of the interview. I mean, you know. So.
Yeah, come on.
That was great. I love it.
as it should have been. This was exactly what I wanted.
Yeah. But was there anything else you guys wanted to touch on?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay. Awesome. All right. I love it. So
my separation anxiety too. We should all be wearing dogs right now. I've always wanted a baby Bjorn for my dog. He's tiny.
Yeah. Can you hold up yours again, Laura, too? Because it's awesome. It's another like amazing. Is that like modeled on your dog?
Yes, it's Belton.
Oh, so cute. Oh, there's Heidi's dog having a dog.
He would fit so well in a baby Bjorn.
Yeah, he really would.
He's only 13 pounds.
Well, there you go.
Impressive.
You should be wearing your dog right now.
You should be wearing your dog. Totally. So before we go, I want to make sure that I let folks know where they can get your books. You can, of course, get them online at bookshop.org, which is where you have a Mighty Blaze store. But you can also, if you are in the Boston area, or even if you're not, because you can do things online, Porter Square Books in Cambridge. Amazing, awesome bookstore. And they have both of your books and they have signed copies of Heidi's book. So if you are jonesing for a signed copy, that is where one can be found. So fabulous. Awesome. Thank you.
Laura, can you hold yours up? Oh, you can't. Okay. Anyway, and by separation anxiety, Laura is hilarious and wonderful writer.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you both so much. Really appreciate it. And thanks to all of you who are watching out there. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.